It's very exciting to have you back, and I guess I'd love to begin the interview, if I could, with I suppose the most recent record, which has just arrived, Smother, and I guess in some ways like an extension and a development of what you were doing with Two Dancers, but in another way quite another step into the unexpected, as you guys have become well known for. Did you have any firm or fixed ideas going into the recording sessions as to its relationship with your previous records, I guess?
Well, I think the record was definitely a reaction to what had happened with Two Dancers, in that, we had really had two choices. When something that you nurture grows, then sort of it becomes of a size that it sort of casts shadows in other areas, and we sort of had a choice of whether to sort of keep growing that and keep climbing up there, or sort of revert into the shadows and see what spaces were hidden. So in fact, I think that's what we sort of naturally felt was better to do, was to go into the dark, really, and to try and see what we could plunder there. It felt it was more exciting and more relevant to do that, rather than to sort of make a Two Dancers 3.
Yeah.
Three Dancers, as it were. and also, I think often you write against the mood in terms of things were going well, and we didn't feel like making a happy clappy summer album, as it were.
And I guess, obviously you've developed a very strong reputation for that, intensely personal and I guess very authentic and literary, I suppose, in a sense as well. Like you're a band which have, a very sort of loyal fan base based on your authenticity and your willingness to explore sounds and styles that other people would, I suppose, be afraid to tread in a way.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a real compliment. I think, I think you can't fake it. I think people know whether you mean it or not, and that's just the human factor. It's unavoidable, and in that sense, we don't really have any fear. And I do think the more you put yourself across, the more it garners faith in people. I think the essential thing in music and a lot of art or books or anything is that sensation of, oh, thank God you feel like that as well.
Yeah.
I think that sort of supportive element and consoling element of music is, I think, what's so essential to people. And in a literary sense, I think we're just trying to sort of unravel and dignify and put words to those sort of dynamics, which the everyday can't really make sense of, sort of revealing and discussing things that you can't really discuss, because that's not how the laws of a social person work, I suppose,
Do you also feel that your music has other purpose, like to paint, a world which doesn't exist, but that could?
Yeah, I think there's an element of idealism to music, to our music, and I think to most people's music, is that you exist in song form or on stage. You are existing in a superhuman state. You have no threat. It's also quite a unique thing in terms of hard and horrible things happen to everyone. And I think the sort of blessing of doing any creative work is that you sort of crystallize those bad things into and have something to show for them, I suppose. So sort of making beauty out of the ugly.
And I guess we sort of touched upon it a little bit about like your approach as a songwriter, but for yourself personally, do you find that there are circumstances or conditions that you require to get your best work done?
I try to be, there is an element of superstition in that I don't want to know what I'm doing. I'd hate the feeling of being professional, or I need some sort of method to create. I think that's sort of dangerous water. I feel a great element of cathartism from writing. It's definitely a cathartic process. It's definitely a release. And as long as I sort of get the buzz off that release, I suppose, and I'll continue doing it, it's that sort of feel-good factor that is addictive in a way.
I guess maybe if we could look at some of the stories and the narratives that you are telling on this most recent record, Smother, were there sort of, clear ideas going into it as to the themes that you wanted to explore?
Oh, we wanted to make a consoling record, I think. The Two Dancers, in a sense, changed our lives quite a lot. We were suddenly away from home a lot, and the strange thing that, a lot of people and places which had sort of supported our growth, we suddenly outgrew. It's quite a painful and almost guilty process, in a way, to sort of have to trample upon those people and places, and I think there was an element of wanting to document and dignify those people and places before they're lost to time. A record is always a snapshot of time, and it was a transitionary phase for us in a way. We'd all just moved to London. Our personal lives had changed quite vastly, and I think in that sense, we wanted a consoling record, and I think that's where Smother came from. It's the pillow. It's the sense of I love you too much.
Is it the case, I suppose, that that sort of cliched idea of moving to a big and sort of hostile city that London can be kind of forced you to confront those dark places to find that consolation?
I think if you go into the darkness, you desperately try and find the light. We wrote the album, in a sort of a basement or a concrete block in urban East London. Actually, for me, the record sounds and derives more of the vast landscape that we grew up in sort of Lake District in North England. Again, I think it comes down to writing against the mood. In a sense, we're quite blessed that we sort of have this taken for granted knowledge that when we close the door and it's just the four of us, we will capture that world. There's not really any doubt about that.
I guess there's maybe even in the video for the latest single, Bed of Nails, a little bit of a slightly more reductionist approach to the visual aesthetic.
Oh, I think absolutely. I think there's a sort of nuts and bolts element. We sort of realise what we're hiding from. This is the mechanics. This is the ins and outs of what we do. And there's a sort of subtle beauty to that, that sort of no nonsense. Why try and make it bigger than what it is? It is what it is. So in the end, we did just, reduce everything down to that's what we look like when we play, that's what we do. And it's not really, doesn't have to really be any more complicated than that. One of the main mission statements for this video in the first place was to reach out to people who haven't heard of us before. This is our faces, this is our music. Almost like a speed dating process. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much again for your time today, Hayden. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Thanks, Simon. Take care.